Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here, and yeah, I had to get my binge on for the Hulu series show Washington Black. There are going to be spoilers in here, so if you haven't watched it yet or not finished yet, come back afterwards. All right. But look, I didn't know anything about this show. I'll be very honest. And it's based on a book by an author by the name of S.C. Edugian, who is a Canadian-born writer who has three books, has won prizes. The name clearly sounds to me of Nigerian ancestry or West African ancestry. So I've never heard of it, and I'll be very honest. I don't watch shows or movies that deal with the slave experience anymore. I feel like these are the types of shows that Hollywood loves. I feel like they never fully portray us in any real uplifting light, generally speaking. And I feel generally that in many of these shows, they uplift white saviors in the movie than the actual black people fighting for liberation or fighting to survive. And so over the years, watching these movies about slave narratives. Now, I've still not seen 12 Years a Slave. So some people talked about that was the case with that movie. I don't know. But that's generally why I don't watch movies or TV shows like that. It's also why I was hesitant to watch this show. But I was trying to figure out what is this thing going on with like flying and during slavery and all of this other type of stuff. But the thing that made, or the person that made me decide to watch this show was Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown to me, he's kind of like in my mind like a Felicia Rashad. And what I mean by that is I don't know of those two to ever associate themselves with anything that didn't showcase black people in some form of positive light. I haven't seen every Sterling K. Brown, movie or television show, but everything that I've seen him in, there's always been some type of dignity, associated with black people in it. Paradise was off the chain as well. So he's that type of guy that I'm gonna watch if he's in something. So I checked it out, and look, the show was awesome for many reasons. And there's several. Let me just hop into some of the reasons. One of the things I loved about it, and I'll get to the final reason, the final like icing on the cake for me. One of the reasons I liked it was a Pan African cast, right? We get into these big debates over whether black British actors getting more run in the United States or black Canadian actors getting more run in the United States than African American actors. And I know there's people on all sides of the debate. Clearly, I put up my post as well as relates to my thoughts on that. But in a show like this, you don't have to worry about it. When I looked up the cast, obviously there's some black folks who are British. There's some who are Canadian, some who are African, some who are African American. Obviously, I mentioned Sterling K. Brown, and then of course the writer, of the show is black as well. When I look at the credits, a lot of the names that I see as the writers of the episodes are clearly people from the diaspora. There's no question about that, and that was really beautiful to see. So I appreciated that. But another thing I appreciate is I appreciate, and look, as I get to these next couple of reasons, let's be also honest about something. In this day and age right now, with all the anti DEI stuff that's happening, all the pushback, all of the blowback, slavery wasn't that bad, all of the things that black people and other groups as well, when I'm speaking about a black experience now, that we're experiencing as it relates to our history being targeted for destruction or removal or not being taught, I am looking for stories and shows that reflect black beautiful things and black complexity. I'm going to do one on the Gilded Age a little bit later that reflect black complexity. Like I want to see that. I don't want to see shows with just black welfare queens and black male criminals and thugs and drug dealers. Like I'm not feeling. Even if I ever was fully feeling that, if as long as it was a good show, I'm not feeling that now. And people are talking about ways to protest. And one of the ways you can protest, especially for those who say like you're resting and stuff, which I'm still not down with, but that's neither here nor there right now. You resting, you watching TV. You can protest with your eyeballs and choose not to see certain things. And I want to see shows that show black women in all of their complexities, black men in all their complexities, and I want to see black men and black women with actual love interests. And some of these movies and shows. I don't care. It could be any type of love story, but I particularly want to see black people loving other black people, because that's also something that Hollywood has shied away from or completely ignored in many ways as well, and that show gave me that. There was love stories throughout the whole thing. That was amazing. Another thing was amazing was I wasn't expecting them to travel the world. I mean, it was a show about flight. I should have figured that out. But this futuristic model of what was going on. You had this man, who was came from the West Indies and all this other type of stuff. Um, he's with some black woman whose father is white, and the mother was black and everything, and they go and they travel to Europe, and then they go to Morocco, then they go to Dahomey, like, and that was beautiful, and it was just it was really powerful. But here's the last thing that was really powerful for me. I can't remember the last show that I saw that had a black boy as the star, because clearly, as I pull up the cast here, clearly, the older man who's like, in his 20s, Ernest Kingsley Jr. is the star, but the other star is Eddie Karanja, who plays the young version of him. And I can't remember the last time I saw a show that did that, or a movie that did that. Look, and I ain't out on the streets all the time in the theaters. I don't see everything, but I just can't remember that. And so it was really great to see. And what I loved about it is that I was sad for a moment, because with the young version of George Washington Black, and some people could say it's based on George Washington Carver as opposed to George Washington. But anyway, we got to see what happens when black children are pushed towards their greatness and their excellence, which is the case for every child when they're pushed towards their excellence and their greatness. I also love the fact that they had an indigenous couple in there that wasn't just workers, working on the mines. They were emotional. They talked about their daughter, like, and so I appreciate that as well. Um, but in a system in our society, when we see what's going on with our prisons, what's going on with our school systems, I do work across the country with educators on how to have programming to reach black boys, and when you reach black boys, by default you reach all of your kids. One of my more popular sessions was called Elevating the Black Male, or is called Elevating the Black Male, and working in schools as it relates to that. At every juncture during this show, with all of the challenges that George Washington Black faced, there were people to push him forward. There are people who wrapped their arms around him. Was it the West Indian Barrington, Theodora, the black woman captain of a pirate ship? I mean, come on, y'all, right? Like, and other white people as well. Obviously, the deaf scientist guy, like, run down the list, and the indigenous group as a couple as well, like, who were so emotional. They wanted him to stay. Like, I just think about, like, what society would look like if we did that regularly, if we pushed our black boys and black girls, if we pushed them towards their greatness, if we stood up for them, if we advocated for them, if we weren't so quick to move towards incarceration and expulsions and suspensions and all of these things that keep them out of the classroom. If we were able to, like, put the services in place that could lead towards reductions in crimes, like happening in Washington D.C. and Baltimore and other cities, particularly with black mayors, like, what would that look like? It would look like a guy like George Washington Black ending that show flying around the world in a ship he created, that his mentor Tom Ellis, who I loved in Lucifer and who was great in this as well, another reason why I watched, he outpaced him. It showed what that could look like. And so, yeah, I it said the end, so I guess there's not going to be another season, or whatever. But I'm happy that I tuned in. I'm happy that I watched. I was sad because I was just like, man, if society just did this for our kids, particularly our black children, like I said, but for all children, things could just be so much different if they didn't greet our children with, suspicion before trust. Like, there was just so much to it that I really appreciated. So thanks to everybody who put that show together. If you haven't watched it, check it out. There's probably some other things I'm forgetting, but I just finished it, and it was really amazing. So I would strongly suggest that in this time, if you're looking for things that uplift us, you're looking for things that uplift black people and black stories. This is in black love, and just black excellence. I would strongly suggest you go and check this show out, Washington Black. Thanks Sterling K. Brown. Thanks to the author, of the book as well. It's a great story, and so I highly recommend it. Let me know what your thoughts are. Peace.